we can move through things. And as people join us, then that will be great. So everyone, welcome. This is our last general PTO meeting of the year. Definitely a crazy year that we have had. So I think a lot of us are excited to move on to next year. And with that, what I'm going to do is pass it over to Katie, our secretary, and she's going to help us approve the minutes from the last general meeting.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. I was going to make a note to put your names in the chat, but it looks like I actually know everybody who's participating outside the exec board. I just need to get the minutes from the February meeting approved. They are actually linked to the agenda that Melissa has in the chat, and that was also in the PTO email. Any comments or questions about the meeting minutes from February? Okay, I just need someone to approve them.
I move to approve the meeting minutes for February.
Thank you. And then I just need a second.
I'll second, Katie.
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Pete and Kelly, who will give us an update about the school.
Yes, hi everybody. I'll kind of fly through these. These were similar, if almost identical to the talking points we had with the exec board, but since there are a couple other people here that were not at our exec board meeting, feel free to slow me down and ask specific questions. I will tell you that I always start with district and building goals, and you've heard me consistently talk about how student connections has been a priority this year. Not only academics, and we certainly consider academics a priority, but this year social emotional learning and student connections has been really a focus along with academics. So I mentioned that because we had to transition to full return, and we really focused that full week on how to blend those 2 AM and PM sessions. And that was something that the teachers did such a phenomenal job thinking about and working through, because it was like the first day of school, again, probably for the 5th time this year, the first day of school, felt like it. And blending those 2 real strong communities of AM and PM was just such a it was such a thoughtful thing that we talked about as a staff and that classroom teachers went through. A couple of things that are coming up for student connections. We're always looking for how can we build and foster those student connections. The first thing is Lori Kuhn is working through the talent show this year with her student leaders. Last year we did do it, but it was virtual and it was online, and we are considering the same type of thing this year. And the reason we're considering it as an online option is for the inclusion of the RLA students. We talked about this as an exec board, and there are pros to having an online talent show, and part of that is families can participate, and students are more readily can participate. Not only that, but families and students can see it that might not be able to attend the actual evening. So that's a priority in terms of student connections that Lori is working through with her student leaders. We haven't quite landed on the logistics yet, but that's coming up in May. The other thing that we have taken as an initiative with our student connections is understanding and appreciating different holidays and different cultures. And Ramadan is currently going on, and we have a diversity calendar that we share with our staff so that they have some resources and are just knowledgeable about the different holidays and cultures and celebrations that occur throughout the year, whether it's Diwali or Ramadan. And the purpose is not to promote or to, I guess promote is probably the best word, not to promote certain holidays or religions or cultures. It is just to increase awareness and increase understanding, which is hopefully helpful to celebrate or to make those student connections. So Ramadan is currently going on, and that ends May 12th with a huge Eid celebration. And it has been great for kids to learn about what that celebration really is. And part of that culture is to fast, both with eating and drinking, and it has engaged in some really unique and and great conversations in the classroom around why that might happen and what that celebrates. I'll also talk about Glacier Ridge planning for next year. We're trying to be very thoughtful about what welcoming students looks like coming into the building for next year. We have a huge array of situations for families, RLA families that have come from Scottish Corners that have never walked into the building. And it maybe if they have, they've even come in just to test. And what kind of environment is it where they've been into the building once or twice in order to take a test. We also have some families that parents that have never walked into the building. So we're not sure what the health and safety protocols will be, but we are going to, as a school team, really look at all the situations and make all those RLA students or new students that didn't quite get the redistricting transition that they deserved. What can we do this year? And whether that is bringing back student ambassadors, bringing back family ambassadors, those are all things that we are considering. Any questions with student connections or any ideas off the top of your head that you'd like us to really think about and consider? If you do, don't hesitate to reach out, because families certainly have the best ideas and the best perspective with what your needs are. Transitioning a little bit to school updates. We do have a lot of school updates. I often describe this time of year as challenging for the school staff. As you know, for the PTO as well, you've got one foot in this year trying to wrap up this year's plans, this year's budget, this year's events, but you're also planning for next year's budget, next year's calendar, next year's events. So we're doing the same kind of thing. So it's a busy time of year. I'll tell you that the first thing that we talked about was full return, and lunch and recess has been in full swing. And hopefully your kids have come home and said that they appreciate being a little bit closer to the normalcy of what a school year might be. Although if you look and peek into our cafeteria, you'll notice the kids are 6 feet apart. But they are still talking, they are still engaging, they are still smiling. So that is that's a positive. And then outside at recess, they are playing just with their class. And you would think that, much like siblings, you get sick of the people that you're hanging around with constantly. And I won't say that that doesn't happen, but I'll tell you that it has been a unique experience because the kids have become much closer and tighter as a tight-knit classroom community, much like quarantine has done for maybe RLA families, and certainly our own family, Curdy family at home when we were in quarantine. We spent more time together. We got to know each other. We had deep, meaningful conversations, and the same is happening for classrooms in terms of playing. I will say quarantine reminders a little bit now that we're 3 feet away. The CDC and Franklin County Public Health is who we really follow. They have updated that quarantine, if they are 3 feet away at school while wearing a mask, if they are in close contact with somebody that tests positive for COVID, they do not need to quarantine. So that is a little bit different. They still are in close contact, but if they are at school wearing masks properly, they do not need to quarantine. The reason that is significant is because typically, if a student were in close contact with somebody that tests positive, they would have to be quarantined themselves. But based on the research, based on what the CDC has recommended and Franklin County Public Health adopted, is if it's at school, transmissions are low at schools, and if they're wearing masks at schools properly, then they do not need to quarantine. And that's designed to cut down on the amount of people that have to quarantine, which is why we don't have to quarantine an entire classroom now that we're 3 feet away, because close contact still is designated as 6 feet apart for greater than 15 minutes within a 24-hour period. So I say all that. Are your kids happy when they come home? Are they happy? I know that question excludes RLA families a little bit, but in terms just speaking of the in-person kids, even though school looks different, are they happy? Hopefully, I see some head nods. that's our design, and hopefully this is one step closer to looking like a normal school, welcoming back the RLA families next year, or whether they are participating in virtual academy. Class list procedures. I go through this each year, and we are in the middle of it right now. The first step, I'll tell you before I get into this, and many of you are familiar with it, it is a very, very thoughtful process. We like to say that we think about each child's needs based on family perspective, based on the classroom teacher's perspective, based on the support staff and counselors' perspective. So we consider all of those when we make a very thoughtful recommendation. So the first step is to gather that feedback and input from you. And right now, that student profile form is available on our newsletters. We just sent it out in an individual email, so that way it is there for you, and we'll probably do that again because it is due Friday. And we sort through that information and then begin to make classroom placements. I will tell you what you put in that form. The only thing that teachers see are your pairings or requests for students to be with your student or separated from your student. All the other anecdotal notes that you put do not go to teachers. And the reason for that is sometimes you have some detailed information or feedback regarding a teacher, and we want to make sure that it remains confidential. But if you do request to be with peers or separated from peers, we do give that to the classroom teacher so they can make those adjustments in their initial list. So that's the first step, is teachers create the first class list. The second step is that we all get together as an admin team, as a grade level, and support staff, including Lori Kuhn. And we then look over those lists and go over them with a fine-tooth comb, looking through any of the feedback that you provided on the form. And Kelly and I just have that information, and we make adjustments based on that. We double check any pairings that you requested to be with or not with. It is during that time that we decide as a team if we think that your recommendations of student pairings is a good pairing for a good learning environment. I will tell you that we really try to make those pairings because we want to make sure that your child has a friend in there and a peer, but sometimes, no offense, but sometimes we disagree just because we see how they interact, and we want to make sure that they have a good positive learning environment. But we do pair them up with somebody that we think will be a good peer. 95% of the time, we go with the parent's recommendation. And sometimes it's just not possible based on all of the information that we have. The third step is that the counselor, Lori Kuhn, and Kelly Axelban and I, we sit down and look over the list with an even more fine-tooth comb. And that's where we dig more into your feedback and really look through all of the information that we may not have felt comfortable talking about in front of the teachers, and just looking at them with a final eye. So it's a thoughtful process. It is not foolproof. It is not perfect. And I know that you wouldn't expect that. And we do make mistakes, but we want to make sure that it is as purposeful as possible, because it is extremely difficult to move students after the class lists are out, and it becomes much more complicated. Any questions with any of the class placement information? Go ahead, Amy.
Hello. So what about teacher movement? I know there's some movement internally, and then some are going to the new middle school. When will we find out when those, I guess, are final? I know they're never finalized, but.
Yep. Usually, that's a good question. Usually I give that information in my end of the year letter.
Okay.
I know that might not be helpful if you're, hoping for a specific teacher, but I send that out with my end of the year letter. And the reason I do it on the last day of school is because it's kind of like a domino effect. We'll hire somebody, or another building will hire somebody, and then they apply to that. And so I would have to send the letter out multiple times.
Yeah.
So I usually wait till the end of the year, but I'll be honest, we don't have a lot of shifting this year. Unlike last year when we lost a lot because we're decreasing in population, there's not a whole lot of movement this year.
Okay.
The other thing I will touch base on, and I think it came up at our exec board, is how are RLA families going to give feedback not RLA families, but RLA teachers going to give feedback about their kids, because that is a process too. And we, as you know, we have non-Glacier Ridge teachers teaching Glacier Ridge kids. So after talking about it with Tyler Wolf, there will be a form that will go to RLA teachers, similar to the process that we had during redistricting. If you remember, Scottish Corners kids were coming to Glacier and Wyandotte kids were coming to Glacier. Those teachers filled out forms similar to the Glacier teachers filling about Glacier kids. So it'll be a standard form to provide information to our school staff about those kids that that have been taught in RLA all year by non-Glacier teachers. Any other questions I can answer about that? Okay.
Well, actually, Pete,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Melissa.
Do we know yet, 5th grade, what that's gonna look like? Will they be able to have like the team teaching, or we're just still waiting for guidance on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will tell you, I'll peel back the curtain a little bit, but I'll be transparent with that. We are hiring some kindergarten or some 5th grade teachers, and the likelihood will be that it's going to be departmentalized. There are pros and cons to departmentalization versus self-contained. If you're not quite familiar with it, departmentalization is where one teacher teaches math, science, social studies, and then another team teacher teaches English language arts, and then the kids switch teachers. So that has been traditionally what we've done in the past. This year it has not, because of safety protocols, where we needed kids to stay in their pods and reduce the amount of touching and sharing items. But so the likelihood of being departmentalized next year is pretty good. The benefit of that is it allows a smoother transition to middle school, because they get a little bit of practice with executive functioning, organizing their materials, planning for one class, and then having to literally get up and go to another class. It's a little bit of a safety net for them because there's only 2 teachers, but it helps with those executive functioning and organizational skills, material organization, all of that. From a teaching standpoint, it also can be very beneficial because it allows the teacher to really hone in on fewer planning subjects to plan. And when there are fewer subjects to plan, ideally you would think that less time or less work. But the focus then is creating even better lessons and more thoughtful lessons. And we don't want teachers to use the lessons that they had year after year after year. That's not good instruction because it doesn't respond to kids. So allowing fewer subjects to plan helps them think of better lessons and more thoughtful lessons. Sometimes the lessons are similar, but they should not be identical. I'll tell you the downfall of that is sometimes in a self-contained classroom, they can spend more time in a subject area based on the needs of students. So offers more flexibility in a self-contained classroom. And also some of the benefits might be you can more easily do interdisciplinary units where language arts spills into science and social studies. But I'll tell you that the team teachers often plan those types of things too. It's a little bit harder because it takes a lot more collaboration and communication between the 2 teaching partners. So it's not impossible. It's just a little harder, and it's easier done in a self-contained classroom. But overall, the research says, and my own personal opinion is that departmentalized offers great options to prepare kids for middle school, but both have pros and cons. That's a very long-winded answer. Sorry, Melissa. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Axelban, and she is going to talk about OST testing, which we are in the middle of. And for I don't know how many people have been introduced to her. I'm pretty sure you have, but Kelly Axelban is our administrative intern, and this is her first year at Glacier Ridge, and she has been doing a phenomenal job. The role is very similar to Sarah Wilcox. And Sarah Wilcox was technically an assistant principal, but due to our population, we Sarah was transitioned over to Hopewell, and then we are fortunate to have Kelly Axelband, who is doing a phenomenal job. Kelly?
Thanks. Nice to see everyone. I will give you a few OST updates. So we have been doing Ohio State testing with our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. 4th grade is all done, and we are moving forward with 3rd grade math tomorrow and Friday. And then we have 5th grade science next week. And then we're just gonna try to wrap it up, get all of our makeups in. We've been doing makeups this week as well. And I've had the pleasure of seeing a lot of our RLA families around, which has been so fun. So thanks to our staff and our families for making testing go as smooth as possible. There's a lot of logistics that haven't been involved before in previous years. So we're very thankful for everybody's hard work and perseverance during this time. The RLA students have been coming in to test. We are not able to administer this test remotely due to test security with the state, and that's been going very well. We do have some students who have chosen to opt out, and that is something that families are entitled to, and we certainly understand and respect that decision, especially in the midst of a global pandemic. That does have some implications, though, for the district and for the building. So when a student or a family opts out, it counts as 0 growth. So in the Glacier Ridge report card through the state and for Dublin City Schools, there is that consequence. However, we certainly understand, and we have had more opt-outs as we anticipated this year than in past years, which again, we respectfully support that decision as well. And again, it's just one standardized test. It helps us to measure student growth, but we use a variety of assessments in Dublin, and our teachers are very well versed in various assessments to help plan their instruction. And with the Ohio State test, we don't even get those results back until well into late summer. So we really are just happy that everybody's been able to make the choice that works best for their family. And we've had a pretty good participation rate regardless of the pandemic. So thanks to everyone for your hard work with that and helping make it as easy as possible for everyone involved.
Are there any questions about anything that you've been hearing in the neighborhood or in your social networks that you'd like me to address in general that I haven't covered or haven't brought up? If you do, you're always welcome to email or bring them up at any point. I would like to say a couple thank yous to those chairs that are chairing the flower sale. Chipotle night was successful, although I heard there was a few backups, but that's a good thing when that means we've got a lot of people that are ordering. So thank you to that. And then the ongoing treats and thoughtfulness. The PTO has been very kind and thoughtful this year with little notes or treats or things. And many of them have just been as a surprise, and that helps significantly with the mental well-being and just spirits of the staff. So thank you very much. There's been lots of updates with the district, which I won't go into. You probably saw all the new hires, everybody from superintendent on through to the diversity and equity coordinator. And if there was any fear or hopes, I am not going anywhere. I'm staying at Glacier Ridge. That was a huge question from the staff, and I just love being here. I'm not sure if that's my path yet, but I will enjoy the ride at Glacier Ridge as long as I can, because as you know, I love my job and I love the school community and I love being here. So I'll be here next year unless they fire me. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Pete. I know one question that on the talent show that we were wondering was if you and Kelly were submitting together a submission, or if the Curdy family and the Axelband family will be having a submission. We look forward to those if they're coming our way for some good entertainment during this really hard year.
I thought, isn't it tradition that the new assistant or intern always does something on their own? I'm pretty sure that's been tradition.
This is the first I'm hearing of a talent show. Actually, I did.
No pressure.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Pete and Kelly, for that update. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Darren so she could just walk us through some of our financials.
Hi guys, I'm Darren. I'm the PTO treasurer. Pete, I don't know if it's an option for me to share my screen so that we can all talk about the same document.
Yep, I think I can give you permission. Does it say that you can't?
Yes.
Let me see.
There we go.
Okay, it should be good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So this is our monthly report, and I did just update it today. So it's slightly different than the one linked in the agenda, but I just kind of wanted to explain the columns and take any questions to start with. So at the top, we have our fundraisers, and then it goes down below, we have our expenses. So the first couple here are fundraisers for us. And then the first column here is the April to date, just for this month, what the action that's happened. And of course, this is our fiscal year to date. So our fiscal year starts July 1. And this is the difference between the fiscal year to date and the 2021 proposal, which is essentially our budgeted number. So you can see here, our meltdown brought in $7,500 compared to the $12,000 that we had budgeted, which of course it was a very different event than what we had planned. And I won't talk through all of these line items, but please let me know if you have any questions about these lines. And I'm gonna kind of scroll down.
While Darren's on the fundraiser one, I did get an update that right now we're over $3,500 in revenue from the flower sale that is still going on.
That's great, because we currently had zero budgeted. We weren't planning to do that activity, so awesome.
And how much did we get for the meltdown last year, Darren?
That's a good question. It was like 16,000, I want to say.
I feel like it was a huge number, but I can't remember it either.
Yeah, it was right around what we were expecting, even though we didn't even have the event.
Yeah, maybe it was the pre-sale on wristbands or something. But
Yeah,
we refunded on wristbands, so it must not have been that. I think just people might have bid a little bit higher last year than they did this year.
so the events, you can see not a lot of spending on events this year, given the pandemic. So essentially a credit to our budget for not spending on those events. And then if you have any questions about any of these, I'm happy to answer them, but kind of the overall conclusion is that to date, this as of 4/30 is really to date, we have an available balance of $48,000. So there is still some spending that we expect to take place. Seeing a lot of classroom supply reimbursements coming in every day from the teachers. We expect to spend art enrichment and library enrichment. And let's see, any other big ticket items? I think
our fifth grade activities is really the biggest one.
Well, actually, I just paid that.
through the new middle school too.
Here, water bottles for the fifth graders. I don't know if that's a surprise. Don't tell your fifth grader.
Sorry, Michelle, can you say that again?
Yeah, I just wondered, what are you donating to the new middle school?
We did write a check to the new middle school. Let's see, donations. This $500 donation was to, oh my gosh, the Eversole Run PTO to get them started. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So a fairly healthy budget for a PTO right now. And so we are going to, I would like to propose that we make two different Tiger grants this year. The first being $4,500 for starts with hello items for next school year. So normally you would budget for this type of thing for next fiscal year, but we want to get the money flowing and ordered right away so that the students can have their item early in the school year. So we normally don't get our budget approved until our meetings happen, and that's a little bit late to get things ordered. So proposing a Tiger grant for $4,500 for the Starts with Hello initiative and items for the students, as well as we are proposing an $8,000 Tiger grant for an outdoor shade and seating area. So I don't know if Pete, if you'd like to chime in, but there's really very little shade out in our recess playground area. So I'd like to provide that.
Yep, I can give a little bit of feedback. If you may have seen in our recent newsletter, Amanda Schroyer, third grade teacher, received a grant from Scott's Lawn. And that was actually a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, and then it was on pause because of COVID. So she used the money for a reading nook right outside on our playground. During our conversation this year, last year's Tiger grant was to renovate the media center. But because of the ups and downs with who was teaching in the media center, we didn't have library classes. Now that that's settled a little bit, we are moving that ball forward, but we know that there's always a need to spend the money that's donated with the PTO. So the team brainstormed this past year some spots and some ideas for outside, and that shade came up. And so the culmination of the reading nook with a large shade outside just kind of came to fruition. So Kelly Axelband reached out to Game Time. We've gotten a couple quotes, and it will be a large 18 by 20 foot shade that will be used dual purpose, just shade outside on the playground during recess. Kids can read out there, or it will be large enough that it could be used as like an outdoor classroom that's convenient for classes as well. So teachers can take their entire class outside and sit in the shade just to be outside. So dual purpose, and we're moving forward in that. We're hopefully we'll have that installed for next year.
With this proposal, we're actually not going to vote on it today. We want to give 2 weeks for families to be able to think about it, discuss, ask extra questions. And so there will be a special meeting on Wednesday, May 5th. And at that meeting, we would vote on that proposal. So that way, again, it gives time for anyone who has questions and us to put it into our Monday emails and stuff, and get feedback from our community. Any other questions on that potential Tiger grant?
As you were talking, Darren, I looked up last year's Meltdown fundraiser, and you were right. We budgeted $16,000. So props to you with that money mind you've got. We actually raised, though, we were under budget just because that was just before COVID. So we did really well considering COVID. We raised actually $12,572 and some change. So pretty close to that. But that was our total for last year's Meltdown.
Thank you, Pete. If there's no other questions financially, I'm going to go ahead and talk about another proposal that we would potentially vote on at the May meeting that I just mentioned, May 5th. And that is a proposal that would change our bylaws. So currently on our exec board, we have 6 positions that can be all co-chaired. One of the positions is an advisor position. And the only people that are eligible to hold that position is someone who's a past president. So someone like myself, Michelle Holden on here. We have a couple other parents still at Glacier Ridge that can hold that position. But what we would like to do is to expand who is eligible for that position to have a greater reach in our Glacier Ridge community. And so what we're proposing is to change it from just being limited to a past president to make it an at-large advisor position. And what that would do would be to increase our voices on the exec board from our overall parent base. And it would give, it kind of takes away that not requirement, but the timeline of kind of becoming a vice president president, and advisor. It still gives the opportunity for any past president to hold that at-large position. So we're not taking away that. We do know it's always beneficial to have that historical perspective, and any past president can run for that at-large position. It still maintains the same number of people that we have on our exec board. And again, expanding that to bring in new voices. It's a position that wouldn't have, I would say, defined responsibilities like a treasurer or the recording secretary. So it's definitely a position that can help out with whatever the needs of the PTO is that year. And so verbiage wise, in the agenda, you'll be able to see the link to it, the proposal for what the current verbiage is in our bylaws, and then what the proposed verbiage is for going forward. Does anyone have any questions about that? Yes, Melissa.
Sorry, just out of curiosity, I mean, I think that that's awesome to continue to try to be more inclusive. What would you do if you don't have the historical perspective? What if for some reason you have like a whole like clean slate of exec board positions and the advisor is not even a historical position? Is there something to, you know, like a safety catch in there to include somebody like that?
Well, as Pete determined, he's staying here forever. So he's our first amazing, having you know, a solid principal that is involved in our PTO. Not all PTOs have as involved of a principal as we have at Glacier Ridge. So that is a huge benefit to us. The second thing is that all PTOs should have good documentation. And so that is a key thing, that if our documentation's good, that should be helpful. And then also there's often times where we don't, like this year, we don't have an advisor, you know, who could have been an advisor, moved out of our Glacier Ridge, you know, area. And so we went this year without that historical perspective per se. So there's years where we don't have advisors, years that we do, and we just roll with it.
If I can give my 2 cents also, just as a past VP president and advisor, I really got a lot out of having Heather Allum and Katrina Erdos as the advisors the year that I was president. I think that it was because maybe as vice presidents, Annette Wiblin and I weren't as involved with what was going on with the presidents and their responsibilities. And so we didn't really know going into our presidential year how much was going to be expected of us. But I know, and maybe Pete remembers, but it probably feels like forever ago, it was really helpful to have them in a meeting. I mean, you can say you have a binder and there should be historical documents, but just have somebody say, oh, actually, you know what? We tried snow cones at the meltdown and Mr. JP was beside himself by all the drips down the hallway, just somebody like that. So I think Melissa Wolf has an interesting thought on that. Now, that being said, I also understand how hard it is to get people involved in making the commitment to a board position. And I think that this might be an interesting opportunity, but maybe you do it without removing the advisor role. I know you don't want to have maybe so many cooks in the kitchen, but if next year, since you're not really going to be acting as advisor, Melissa Bogner, maybe it's your chance to try it without eliminating the advisor role and just see, how that goes.
If you don't mind me piggyback on that, Michelle, I agree with you 100%. I think you bring a unique perspective, and you and I have had those conversations about VPs being involved and about how it's a shock going from VP to president and how different it is. And that's a conversation I carried on with Melissa. And I don't know if Hillary and Ellie would agree. But I think it's been very purposeful of Melissa and the team to really involve the board as much as possible and give them a lot of opportunities and a lot of leadership tasks in order to build that capacity. So it's much more they feel much more prepared and involved to roll into that role. So that's the first thing. And so feel free to jump in, Hillary, and I know Ellie's not on here. The second thing I'd say is, over the past couple of years, those binders that are handed down from person to person, it is just sheet after sheet after sheet of outdated invoices, and the binders became much less helpful than they were intended to be. So I know that over the years, the board and Melissa have also really tried to wean down and refine that documentation so that it's purposeful and that it's not just a jumble of random notes. So neither of those things are perfect, but we have really tried to address those so that way it's successful. But I also appreciate your perspective of, yeah, the advisors definitely bring some institutional knowledge, especially if the principal doesn't happen to be here, or those small things. So the more knowledge, the better. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I definitely feel prepared after this year in continuing the role. I feel like I can speak for Ellie that, she's looking forward to expanding her role, and that we've been given a lot of opportunity this year. Certainly it's a year unlike no other. We've been able to learn, and there are things that, we haven't really dealt with before because they happen in a normal year, and this was not like that. I look forward to, when I think about this at-large advisor role, whether it's a past president or whether it's someone who served on the board or whether it's a first-time parent coming in with a kindergartner, that it's really an opportunity for someone to get involved early on in the process. Looking back, I wish I had the courage to have done that earlier. And so, I'm hopeful that we can, get some new faces in, some fresh ideas, people who want to get involved and see what it's about, and really, work on the retention and recruitment for the executive board, because, Michelle, you said it's tough. It's hard to recruit people to those positions who can make that commitment. And so I'm hopeful that it gives us that historical need, as well as, some of those futuristic needs that maybe we don't see right now because we're in it, and a perspective that somebody new might be able to bring to that.
I have a question. So basically, you're trying to say that the advisor position can basically be open to anybody?
It would be open to anybody who's a parent at Glacier Ridge.
So, to me, I'm feeling more like it's not really an advisor position. To me, an advisor means somebody who's kind of already done this. So I don't think it's a bad idea to have that position open to anybody, but for me to be calling that person the advisor to the president and the vice president, I feel like they probably would need more information and knowledge as these positions. You learn through all of these positions. I've been at Glacier Ridge for a couple of years now, and I don't think I would be able to advise the president because I haven't been able to do that.
What about from a wording standpoint change? Could it be an at-large member and really just switch out that word advisor?
Yeah, I think that might be probably what you're, more try to include more people on the board. But I feel like, so to me, I feel like advisor means more who's the person who's advising, who's done all this.
That makes good sense. Does anyone else have any good synonyms for a member?
What about liaison?
Liaison.
Because you're looking, it seems like the desire is to get, like you said, more input from the larger community. And so they're kind of bridging that gap maybe, and I want you to know I was not like saying I didn't like the idea. I just my personal experience on, scholarship where, it was handed over without the historical knowledge, and recreating that, I just wouldn't want to do that to someone else. So, and I just feel like the exec board is such a bigger entity with, more, it's probably beneficial to know, like, people at central office or different, who, someone who can advise you to connect with the right people, which somebody without the previous experience wouldn't have. So I think there's value to both. And I don't want you to think I was shooting it down when I was questioning that. I just,
No, this was all about just brainstorming, talking through it, open discussion. So all that feedback is wonderful.
There's counselor, consultant, helper. I don't think trainer is the right word. Mentor, guide. I just looked it up
Anyone
quickly.
have anyone in particular that they would think fits kind of that best of trying to open up the exec board, break down barriers, get more individuals involved who haven't been able to give a voice before?
From my own perspective, I see the role being very similar to key communicators, and many of you may be familiar with the key communicators, either being on it at Glacier Ridge or district level. The role of a key communicator is essentially that's what we described it as, was the liaison between the school and the school community, and getting the information out in an more informal kind of way. We have had Ning create more formal ways to communicate, but this would be, what are you hearing in the neighborhood, and continue to spread. Not that you all don't do that, but that would be the primary role of this person, to get the informal pulse of the school community in a variety of ways. So liaison speaks about that, and if you look at the reasons for the update, a lot of those reasons describe a liaison type of person with the informal type of networking and communication, in addition to our corresponding secretary and communication secretary already.
Are you guys okay if we kind of move that to the wording of an at-large liaison on this proposal? And again, this is not to vote on today. It would be able to, so we can send it out to our overall Glacier Ridge population, and we would do a vote at the special meeting on May 5th. Sounds like liaison's good for some wording. Thank you guys for talking through that. And just like anything else, if there's any questions, reach out to myself, Pete, or anyone on our Glacier Ridge board to talk through those. Shuffling back through our agenda, and I'm going to turn it over to Katie now for our actual board elections for next year.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so the way the board elections work annually with Glacier Ridge is that we go ahead and ask for nominations. Generally it's self-nominated, or talk to the principal or Peter Kelly. If we have, each position has up to 2 slots, so we can have co-positions, and it only gets taken to a vote if we were to have 3 people nominated for any position. As of right now, the current positions, current slate or nominees: for co-president, we have Ning Kalmar and Ellie Moore. For vice president, we have Hillary Brooks. For corresponding secretary, we have Rachel Wolf. And for recording secretary, we have Shilpa Gupta. And then for treasurer, we have Melissa Bogner and Ellen Little. I do want to ask, is there anybody else that wants to nominate themselves for any of the positions at this time? Okay, so I'll say no. And then based upon our nominations, I'm sorry, my son is playing, I think, Fortnite. If you can hear him, sorry. Sorry. So based upon us only having each position, we only have 2 nominees, we can go ahead and say that the nominees will assume their role as of July 1st. Any questions, comments? Sorry for all the
No,
noise.
thank you. Thank you, Katie, for hosting that. Thank you, everyone, for volunteering and stepping up. And we have all been in Katie's position, so we all totally get it. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ning, who will now officially be one of our co-presidents for next year. And she's just going to talk about our continual recruiting to continue to fill in some of those positions that we haven't done yet.
First of all, I wanted to thank so many of you for agreeing to serve on the board or chair an event for next year, because we can't do it without you. We do have a few chairs that we're still looking for a few events. One of them is Copycat. you want me to go into descriptions of the events, or do you already kind of know?
You could just list the major ones, and we can send out additional descriptions too for those
So
ranked ones.
copycats is one of them.
Hey, can I interject something
Yeah.
here? When you have the link in the newsletter that has the list for signups, maybe a little blurb under each one. So if somebody thinks like, oh, maybe I want to, but I can't remember, I don't know what copycat means, that might, just in the sign up genius, it might give them that, oh, that's right. I remember when Kathleen McCarthy used to do copycats, and I can ask her about it, or something like that.
Okay, that's a great idea. Yeah, I'll add that for the next newsletter. Also Fall Festival at Leeds Farm, that's a big one for us. So, and let's see, staff conference night dinners. We split up staff appreciation this year because it's such a big event. So Amy's gonna chair staff appreciation the week. And then we still are looking for a chair for staff conference dinners, which would be 4 dinners a year during parent-teacher conference nights. And then meltdown donations, we're looking for a chair for that. So if you have any friends, I think I've talked to most of you, but if you have any friends or change your mind, I won't harass you anymore, but the Sign Up Genius link will be out there. I think that's it. Am I missing anything?
We're also going to continue to look for another co-VP to help fill in that position as well. What we're really hoping for and excited was that a lot of our families who came over from Scottish Corner this year, or even those kindergarten and first grade parents, you start to get involved. Then we just had this wonky year. And so we didn't get the opportunity to connect with a lot of parents. And so we really see over the summer, that early time fall, as parents start to know a little bit more, have the opportunity to get into our school, know more about the PTO, that we're hoping that we have a parent or two that raise their hand and is like, oh, okay, yeah, I would love to get involved type thing. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and turn over to Hillary and Ellie, and they can just kind of talk about what's coming up next.
Ellie, if it's fine with you, I'll touch on a few, and then if you want to talk about staff appreciation, then. So we've got, thank you. So we've got the Fort Myer flower sale. As Darren mentioned, from a budgeting standpoint, we were not previously going to do the spring sale, only the fall mum one. But Allison Nagashima stepped up and was willing to chair this for us, and it's going to be a great fundraiser. That is going on through the end of this week, and then pickup will be on May 8th from 9 to 11 at school. In our newsletter, there is a sign up that's out for volunteers that are needed. So this will not be like the fall. We will do the pickup that is done traditionally at Glacier Ridge, but certainly we do need volunteers to help make that successful, whether it is unloading the truck and sorting the orders or helping families during their pickup time. As everyone, or as Melissa mentioned, as well as Darren, we will be holding a special PTO meeting on that May 5th at 5 p.m. that will be to vote on the at-large positions as well as the Tiger Grant. So that'll occur then. And then on May 10th, we are targeting to do a Dewey's fundraiser night, just like we did with Chipotle, hopefully, however, with a few less bumps in the road there. But I'm working with Dewey's right now to hopefully solidify that. And we're targeting that day right after Mother's Day to hopefully give another night off cooking and support a local business and raise some funds for our school. And then May 10th through the 14th, this came out in the last newsletter around the Scholastic Book Fair. So it'll be held in person for our in-person students during their library time. And then there will also be opportunities for the online portion, as we've done previously for our RLA and any families who would like to access it that way. So Ellie, updates from you.
Thank you. I am going to be completely honest. I'm in my car right now, so I with the kids and the dog, so I am going to keep my camera off. So we have staff appreciation coming up. And as you can hear Abram in the background. So Katie, you're not alone. So we have that coming up. We've planned for a little something every day of the week for the staff. We're gonna start out with on Friday after school. we will decorate the lounge and also set out some treats for the staff to come into, so when they come in Monday morning. We also have like Chalk the Walk that we did at the beginning of the school year, and just some other fun things planned. We do have a Sign Up Genius out, and that goes into more detail of everything that we are planning on doing. So if you would like to sign up and help, or if you have any questions, you can reach out to me or reach out to anybody on the PTO board, and we can answer any questions. And that is it.
Just to add, one thing that's a little different than some other years is we are kind of letting just room parents do their own thing this year instead of coordinating, because we have such a difference with RLA and in-person kids, and some of our kids are, just like Pete said, being taught by non-Glacier Ridge, and so it was just a little bit too confusing to say, coordinate something across the school. So that is a little bit different than prior years, but we're still excited. The PTO will be doing something every single day for our staff members, all 70 plus of them. So we're very excited about that opportunity.
And on behalf of the staff, we never expect those things. We know it's staff appreciation, but we never expect those things. We just appreciate your support and your kindness and empathy, and you always go above and beyond, but really just your thoughts and support is enough, but it is much appreciated. So thank you.
Our pleasure. Melissa, do you want to give a little bit of an update on scholarship?
Sure. So scholarship, we met that week right before spring break, selected the candidate, which, to be honest, right now, the last name's Pelleru. It's escaping me, the first name, I apologize. But several good candidates. All of them were amazing. And we've already contacted Darren. Darren's already given us the scholarship check. I believe it's like May 19th will be Jerome. Our student happened to be from Jerome. But we did have candidates from all three schools this year. I've been in contact with Melissa in particular because we've noticed a continued decline. And it sounds like this is going on for a lot of the local scholarships. And yes, Pete, you're right. And I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, but Sadiksha Pelleru. Thank you. Pete for the save. But anyway, so we, as a committee, kind of dove into some ideas, and then again, we kind of banged those out a little bit more, even with Melissa. And through those conversations and brainstorms, and then additionally some discussions with the counselors from the three high schools, as well as our contact at central office, sorry. We're going to continue to work on trying to figure out, we may look at possibly changing for the district when we do local scholarships. There's a concern that maybe it's hitting them at a tough time. There's lots of tough times though in that senior year calendar. So we're gonna look at that here in June and kind of discuss, but we're trying to take the lessons learned and just see if we can tweak this and entice. We're trying to give away money here, and we want, people to benefit and put that opportunity out there to even more people to have the accessibility to it. So, and then I guess the last thing to note, we typically would go and present our scholarship. I've gone in the past, or we've had Mike Nemeth, Erica Kelly have gone to help present. But this year it is student only, just given the pandemic. So it'll be a more intimate celebration, but we'll probably do what we did last year and do a contact free, I guess, drop of the actual check and we've done like a little something with a bundt cake, balloons, whatnot, and then they will receive their actual frame certificate at the award ceremony at Jerome. So that's, I think, did I cover what you were hoping, Melissa?
Yes, thank
All
you.
right.
On top of what Melissa mentioned, the committee had done a great job just looking at the process. Where can we improve it? How can we reach out to more individuals who have attended Glacier Ridge? But we also reached out to a couple other PTOs and kind of asked what they did. And Pete kind of put in our notes for a normal year is a lot of the schools have their kids come back and be part of that, talking to fifth graders about like their middle school experience, or talking to another grade about their time at Glacier Ridge. So just another way to kind of add and give that individual a little spotlight, have them come back to Glacier Ridge. And we thought that was really nice in a year that we can make that happen. For this year, we will definitely do some social media posts and put it in our newsletter to highlight that. But I did like that idea of them kind of coming back.
Yep.
Also on scholarship, many of you may not know that us as a PTO and PTOs across the district combine funds to give a scholarship to each of the 3 high schools. So there's 3 $1,000 scholarships that the PTO district as a whole, prior it was called the PTO President's Scholarship. However, we are changing the name of that to be inclusive to everyone who actually participates in donating it, since it comes from our PTO as a whole, not I didn't personally give my money to the fund. It came from us as a whole. So it will be, I think, the Dublin City Schools PTO scholarship going forward.
And I think, Melissa, that again, kudos on making that happen, because I just having presented at the scholarship before, there's been questions between the presenters, like, so you can only get that if you're a kid of a president. And so I think it's a great name change. I think that's great. Thank you.
Again, just trying to take a look at everything and see where we can improve our processes and be more inclusive throughout. Last thing I had was Becky Crawford is our PERC liaison, and she's not able to be here today, but had sent me a list of updates. Actually going on that inclusivity, they are looking to change their name next year. So PERC stands for Parents Encouraging Responsible Choices. And they would like to keep that same acronym, but they realize that even having the word parents is not inclusive to all adult figures who are raising some of our kids in our district. So I know they're again, another opportunity where they're looking at being more inclusive. And even their logo, I think currently might show a family, male woman family with 2 kids. And so I think they're looking at that and how they can just revise that. They do have some open positions on their board. They are very excited. And a handful of other organizations are using our academies at the Emerald campus to help them. So next year, PERC will be using the new Communications Academy that's focused on social media and marketing to help them. So I think that's a great way to give back and allow our students at that high school level to have real world experience. Besides PERC, I know there's a couple other nonprofits that will be using them as well. And then she just gave me a list of some of the upcoming programs for next year. There is one targeting for 8th grade parents moving to high school, a Street Smart one on drug awareness, a predators and safety, an adolescent risk taking behavior. It's to accompany a book called Born to be Wild. Mental health for younger individuals. So I know across the district, sometimes we talk more at that higher high school level. So they would like to do a discussion at that based more on that elementary level. And a couple new topics with our new DEI director as she gets up and running. They're looking forward to having some new topics with her. So that is all that we have on our agenda. Is there any questions, anything that anyone's hearing wants to chat about?
How many of your kids thought there was going to be a snow day today?
All three.
I'm sure. I mean, it was a topic even in the Curdy household.
Mine asked me if we could drive out to Mad River and take them to the top of the hill so that they could ski down it, of course. And I said, if I could drive, that would not be the first place I would go.
Hey, Pete, I have a question. What are our numbers looking like for next year in terms of student count, student enrollment? Like how much are we changing or shifting? I just, know with new developments going in the area, just wondering where we'll.
Future Think is the company that Dublin uses to project the student enrollment. We're projected to be at 540, which is pretty much identical to what we were projected to be at this year. Of course, this year we have RLA students that have reduced that, but we're projected to be at around 540. What that means for sections next year, and this is all in the letter that I communicate at the end of the year. Kindergarten is a bit of an unknown. So right now we have 2 sections of kindergarten. And Kelly, correct me because I'm doing this off the top of my head. Next year we'll have 4 first grades. We will have 3 second grades. We will have 5 third grades, 4 fourth grades, and 4 fifth grades. So some shifting in grades there. And of course, as I mentioned, the dominoes don't completely fall until the end of the year. So I'll communicate all of that and the shifting of some staff in those grades, because obviously there are fewer sections in some and more in others. And we're hiring some as well. But that's tentatively where we'll land.
Any other questions for our PTO or for Pete and Kelly? Well, we just want to thank you guys very much for giving your time tonight and being involved with our amazing school at Glacier Ridge. So I'm glad that the sun's out right now. The snow has all melted and hopefully it turns back to spring very soon. But we do live in Ohio and I'm from Cleveland, so I never trust the weather. We just roll with it, which is what we've done all year, roll with it. So thank you guys very much. Everyone have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.